Seek the Joy podcast. Happy Seek the Joy Tuesday. On the podcast today is Lauren Peterson, and Lauren is an entrepreneur, personal development junkie, philanthropist, and money mindset coach. Lauren's mission is to drastically impact the lives of 1 million people. And she's doing this through coaching and guiding a global empowerment of women to live their fullest lives and ultimately change the world. She really believes that her purpose is to help create conscious entrepreneurs by helping women discover their purpose, define their values, and align with a cause that's greater than themselves. Before we jumped in to talking about the 3 pillars that Lauren works with, and that's change your mindset, change your money, and change the world, I really wanted to talk to her about where it all began. We had such a fun and amazing conversation, and I know you guys are going to love it. And we talked all about Lauren's personal development journey, the role of self-love in her life, and what it's been like developing a relationship with herself and standing on her own 2 feet. We also talked about her spiritual and self-care practice, the role that depression has played in her life, changing our mindset and our language around money, and so much more. Lauren really shares so much of herself in today's episode, and I so enjoyed connecting with her and learning about her journey. You know, she's really empowered herself, and now she's helping other women to do the same. And it was so cool to hear her talk about her journey and how she really got to where she is today. And she shares this story about how she jumped out of a plane last year. Yes, literally jumped out of a plane. So make sure you listen to this episode all the way through to the end to hear that story. And my reaction, honestly, guys, Lauren is incredible. Also, Lauren recently started the Women of Impact Facebook group, which I am a member of, and I'm loving it. I love the connections that are being made and the advice and the feedback and the tips that are going around. So if that feels good to you and something that you'd want to be a part of, I highly encourage you to check it out. And all of the information for the Women of Impact Facebook group and where you can find Lauren is all in the show notes for today's episode. So make sure you check that out. And as always, you can find our show notes by going to seekthejoypodcast.com/show-notes, and everything you need is right there. Okay, just a couple of quick announcements before we dive into today's episode. First of all, we are gearing up for the 4th episode in the power of storytelling, and I have been blown away by the feedback to this series and to all of you who have already been part of it and who have shared your story. And I would love for anyone out there that's listening who wants to be part of it to be part of it. So head over to our website and click on the Share Your Story tab. On that page, you can fill out our interest form, and I will get back to you ASAP. And as always, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I would just love for you guys to be part of this new series. Okay, my second announcement is thank you so much, as always, to everyone who has rated and reviewed the podcast on Apple iTunes. Ratings and reviews help us get seen by new people and other podcasts. And on another note, I really just enjoy reading and hearing and seeing what you guys think about the podcast. So if you feel so inspired to leave us a rating and review on Apple iTunes, make sure you send a screenshot of that review to Sydney at seekthejoypodcast.com, and I will send you my guide for infusing more joy into your life, as well as a couple of limited edition Seek the Joy podcast stickers. I don't know, I'm currently scrolling through the reviews that have been left for Seek the Joy podcast, and you guys just continuously blow me away between the reviews and the emails and the messages that I get on Instagram every single week. Thank you so much for always sharing with me what Seek the Joy podcast has meant to you and the kind of impact that it's had on your life. I've had the opportunity recently to reflect on the last 6 months and why I'm doing this and why I started it and the kind of impact that it's had on my life. And every time someone asks me that, I always come back to, well, I get to see the impact that it has on someone else's life. And so I'm just really touched and feel really grateful and honored to be able to do this. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. I would love to know what you think about the podcast. So if you feel so inspired to send in a review or send me an email or whatever that looks like, I would be so grateful. Okay, guys, that's it. I promise. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Lauren.
Thank you, Sydney. I'm really excited that you had me on. So I love when people ask me this question. I like to tell people I'm a slasher. I know that sounds terrible when you hear it out loud.
That sounds like really I can't, like I'm like murdery. I don't know.
I'm not a murderer, I promise you. No, so hear me out. So I'm a slasher. I'm an entrepreneur / philanthropist / personal development junkie. So that's where the slasher comes in.
It makes
People
more
have
sense.
Multiple different outlets. Yeah. But most importantly, I like to say that I'm an inspirational leader. So I coach and comfort and guide a global empowerment of women to ultimately live their fullest life and change the world. Whoa, it sounds crazy when you say it out loud. But it's never really easy when I answer that question at a cocktail party. I usually just tell people, I'm like, I'm in marketing. It's easier for people to digest. It's not untrue. I do also own a marketing agency called Align, so it's not entirely false. And then calling myself a life coach is really, it's super unsexy. Like, it's not a sexy term. I'm a life coach. So ultimately, now that I've blabbed on for 10 minutes, I work with young females, primarily millennials, so to overcome their internal hurdles and then master their mindset and then get in touch with who they are as a person. So then they come to the realization about what they really want out of life. And then we work with their money mindset to sort of craft that stability on where they can go and ultimately just really conquer their dreams and what they want out of life.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love it. Well, thank you for the explanation of
You're
what
welcome.
being a slasher means. I had this like horror movie, like image in my mind, but okay. So when did
I'm sitting here with like a side pony right now. Like I'm the mass murderer with a side pony.
It's perfect. Listen, no one would expect it. But so when did you first step into doing, I guess, all of these different things, personal development, life coach, money mindset, even marketing? When did that really start?
Oh, so it's a big, long story, but I say that the whole life coach personal development thing, I really started on my personal development journey. I mean, really my entire life, but I really dove deep about a year ago. And I sort of was doing it on the side. So like anyone's, dreams, you're not really sure. You kind of like dabble here and there. I created a website. I started doing a blog. And people started following me on Instagram, and I would get direct messages like, oh, you're so inspirational. Like, how do I become positive? Or how do I just live a happy life? And like, really, that just hits you in your core. Like when someone tells you like, how can I be happy? I mean, I have the chills just thinking about it. That's when I knew I had something here. Like, it wasn't just me trying to find happiness. It's an epidemic of like unhappy women in the world. I say women because I work with primarily women. Men, you can be unhappy too. It's okay.
No, but I think that's a good point too. I mean, it's really, I think, chronic with, I just dropped my pen. I think it's really chronic with men and women, but I love that your work really focuses on women.
Yeah. Well, you also have to pick a niche.
Yeah. And also sharing your own story and then making it, I think it makes it very relatable for a lot of people, especially women who can identify or see themselves sort of in the journey that you've been on. So can we talk about maybe a little bit of your personal development journey and just kind of stepping into that happiness? Because I think right now, I mean, especially I'm reflecting on my own life and my own journey where I'm at. I think it ebbs and flows, but I think we can eventually get to a space where we feel those happy, positive emotions maybe more often than the negative ones. So I'd love to hear what your journey with that has been like.
No, of course. And I just have to say that, like, I'm not happy all the time. Like
Yeah,
people think they're like, oh my gosh, you're a personal development coach. Like you're happy all the time. That's not the way life works. Like,
I
I
100%
mean,
agree.
I had a really bad day on Monday, and you have to take those negative experiences and to appreciate the good ones. Like you need that contrast in your life. So I just wanted to start off by saying that
Yeah.
it's not like happiness and butterflies and you just like loving everyone all the time. If you hear people that say that, be very cautious of
Yeah,
that.
I think it's impossible to be happy all the time, but I think
Yeah.
it's possible to figure out a way to like accept and honor those negative emotions that you're kind of dealing
Mhm.
with and then be able to sort of move past it, because if you
Yeah.
sit with it too long. So I agree. I mean, I'm not happy all the time. I have a podcast about seeking joy, but I spend most of the time seeking that joy as opposed to maybe
Yeah.
being in it all the time. And so I think that's really important, to share that too.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree very much so. Back to your question about my journey.
Yes.
So I have struggled with depression my entire life. It actually runs in my family. My uncle suffers from depression. He's an alcoholic. And my grandmother, who passed away a year ago, actually last week, suffered severely with depression. So I always knew it was very prevalent in my family. My parents and my sister, however, are not susceptible to it. So I like to say that it's hard when you start to talk about depression because a lot of people don't really know how to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
People say that like, oh, it's, you can change these things. And I just don't believe that. I truly believe that it's most likely genetic. But it's, yeah, you can contain it. You can put things in place in your life to change the way you handle that depression. So I grew up most of my life. If you knew me as a kid, I was very, very happy. As a baby, I was super happy. We're not going to go that far back, but I was always known as just a very, very happy person on the outside. On the inside, I struggled with just so many internal obstacles. I was a perfectionist. I always needed to make sure that everything I did was perfect to a T. And I never really felt like I fit in, even with my friends. Like I didn't feel like I could be open and honest with them about what I was going through, it makes me really sad to sort of think back about how unhappy I was as a kid. Like, oh God, I'm going to probably cry on this podcast.
It's okay.
I don't feel that any child should ever go through that. But I was always very smart and very mature for my age. So I was always really looking for how I can improve myself. Like I knew this wasn't how I was supposed to live. I knew you weren't supposed to be unhappy all the time, but I didn't know how to go about finding those things. So like when the internet came about, oh my gosh, it changed my world.
Yeah.
And so I went to college and I actually studied psychology for that reason, because I wanted to really understand what I went through and how to fix it. So after college, in college, I was going to get my master's and decided that wasn't really the right route for me. I loved the work that I did, but I hate being in a lab. I don't know if you've ever been in a lab before, but it's
It's not for me either.
In a research facility. It's like, it's a 2x4 room that you sit in all day. And I was like, this is not for me. I like working with people. It's not going to happen. So basically after college, I ended up getting in the fashion industry. I feel like I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but I promise you that it'll be worth it.
No, it's so interesting to hear about your journey and your story. So there's no tangent, there's only one path. You got it.
So after college, I got in the fashion industry because my mother was actually a fashion designer. Ended up working in fashion PR and hated it. And I was like, what am I supposed to do now? So now, I'm still sort of on the side. I was reading about nutrition. I was reading about personal development books. But I had so many other interests, and I just didn't know where I was supposed to land. Like, I know that there's a greater purpose to my life, but I didn't know where that fit. All in all, the whole time, I knew that I was meant to become an entrepreneur. I said it from day one. I was like, I'm going to own my own business one day. But I thought, maybe I'll get in the fashion industry and start a clothing line, or maybe I'll open up a flower shop, yada, yada. Then after I left the fashion industry, I thought I was going to open a restaurant. So being that I never worked in a restaurant before, I got into that and basically worked my way up from a hostess and ended up running the hospitality group within 4 years. So that was really exciting and a very important time period of my life, because I learned leadership. I learned how to manage a team of like 100 people, which was fascinating. And I learned how to deal with stress. But I still knew I was like running a restaurant, and this industry is not for me. And I then ended up getting into food and hospitality PR. And while I loved what I did, telling people stories and the creative aspect of it, and I really did love marketing, I just didn't like working for someone else. So when my grandmother became ill, we spent a whole year talking about how depression really affected her life. And the last thing that she said to me, the last time I saw her, months before she passed, she said she had, her biggest regret in life was that she didn't live a happy life. And, and I just knew in that moment that I was like, no one should ever say that on their deathbed. And that was really my driving force to really find my happiness and to inspire happiness within others. And so after that, I quit my job and just started doing what I'm doing now full time. Woo, waterworks.
No, oh my God, I love this story. I love how the inspiration really came from someone who is so close to you and means so much to you, because I'm confident that, you know, even if she's not here with you physically, she's still with you all the time in spirit. I'm sure you feel that way. And I don't know, I'm just kind of soaking it all in. So now with everything that you've been doing and the inspiration coming from your grandma, and is there an aspect of your work that you feel has really impacted you the most, or that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, I can't really pinpoint it to one. I think, so I do, basically my body work is 3 things. We tackle mindset, which is extremely important. I talk about meditation and really going over your internal obstacles, which is how I sort of overcame my depression in my life, because I believe, you know, your beliefs and your thought really guide everything in your life. In the beginning of my personal development journey, so great, I started meditating more. I had the self-confidence in myself. I saw these dreams that I wanted to accomplish, but I'm very practical. I'm not, I'm a very grounded person. I'm not this like airy personality where I just go out and take risks willy-nilly. Yeah. So the practical side of me was like, okay, cool. Now I have a dream and what I want to accomplish, but at the end of the day, I need to pay bills. And I realized that I never really had a very financial foundation set up, and no one in my life had taught me about it. And I noticed it was a common thread with the females in my life that we didn't talk about money. I don't know about money. I don't know how to manage it. I just don't really think about it. And I was like, whoa, this is an issue that we need to tackle. Like, yeah, it's great that you master your mindset and your beliefs, but where is that going to take you if you don't have the money to back it up? Like, I want everyone to accomplish their dream in life, whether it's start a business or run a company, and ultimately change the world and give back. And I'll get to that point as well. But I noticed that these women really needed a financial foundation to support their life. And I didn't want them to rely on anyone else for the support. So that comes into the whole female empowerment thing.
So along those lines, in terms of the money mindset, because I do think that's something that a lot of us, especially our generation, is dealing with or learning about. And a lot of it obviously has to do with our parents, financial stories or their experiences handling money. And I've read different places, there's sort of like that imprint in a way. You sort of learn those stories, or kind of those stories become ingrained in terms of money and with other things too. So along those lines, because obviously, what you teach comes from your own experiences, how were you able to shift your own money mindset so that you were able to give yourself that kind of strong foundation?
Yeah. So I knew nothing about money mindset until I came across Leanne Jacobs, who's amazing. I love her so much. Leanne, if you're listening to this, here's my holler. She was the one who taught me that you can make money, and at the end of the day, you don't have to be an ass about it. Like, I had this belief that people who made money were bad people. I mean, it's crazy now to think about it. So when I learned about what your money story is, which for anyone who doesn't know that, it's basically how you think and react and communicate about your money. And it stems from birth. So if you were raised by parents, it's what your parents have taught you about money. So my parents, they grew up poor. And so they always taught me, Lauren, you need to save. That money doesn't grow on trees. You will never have enough money that you will need in life. You have to work very hard and save. My mother, bless her heart, she is a coupon for everything. And still to this day, my parents always valued money over time, which was when I really dug into my past and what they taught me about money. I realized that time is your greatest asset, and I had to overcome that hurdle that I was worthy of money. I also, like I mentioned earlier, when someone talked about wealth, so if you say, like, if I ask a question, a billionaire, like, how do you feel about someone who's a billionaire? And I immediately, the first word I would think of was, oh, well, he's a bad person. And that shocked me. When someone asked me that question, I'm like, why do I think that? So it was a lot of internal work that I had to do to really understand that, you can make money and be a good person. And when I started volunteering and giving back and valuing my time over money, I noticed that I loved making money so I could give it back to the world. And that was my whole driving force. I wanted to be able to support my parents. One day I want to be able to buy them a house and take them on a nice vacation because they work so hard and I love them so much. And I want to be able to start a foundation and donate my money to a good cause. So that was the work that I had to do when it came to my money story. And it's what I work with women today to really develop like a healthy relationship with their money.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because you really do have to shift that relationship. And so for someone who's interested in doing that, what would be your biggest tip?
Oh, okay. So I love this question. Every cocktail party, they ask me this question. I'm like, yes, you can pay me, and then we'll dive into this deeper. No. Biggest tip. So you have to start with your first memory around money. So for example, my first memory, and hey, Leah, I hope you're listening to this. That's my lovely sister. I took money from my sister at a young age. Like, my sister was given money for a birthday, and I can't even tell you what I wanted to buy. I think it was like a stick of gum. And my mom was like, we don't have the money for that. You can't afford it. So my first reaction as a child was, let me take it for my sister. And that's terrible when you think about it, because I didn't consider myself a thief or a bad person, but as a child, it was so ingrained in me that I was never going to have enough money that I might as well just take it from somebody else. Mm-hmm. Oh, it pains me to even listen to myself say that, but I had to really overcome that belief that I was worthy to make money. And so really thinking about your first story around money, and then sort of write down, when you think about a wealthy person, how do you feel? It's all about how you feel when it comes to money. If you think about a poor person, how do you feel? And you'll start to see your trend and how you speak around money. Also, something like, listen when you're outside and talking about money, like if you want to buy an expensive dress, do you say to yourself, oh, I can't afford that? Or do you say, you know what, I can afford it, but it's not something I need to purchase right now. So listen to the way you speak around money in an outside setting. and you'll start to notice some trends. You need to make sure that you're always speaking positive around it. Also things like, are you respecting money? If I haven't mentioned earlier, I used to live in New York City, just recently moved to California. Woo-hoo. But in New York, there's money everywhere on the ground, everywhere. And people never pick it up. Like, if I see a penny on the ground, as gross as it is in a New York City subway, I pick it up. Money is money, whether it's a penny or $1 million. So you have to respect it. And also make sure that you're circulating that money within the universe. I know I'm going to get a little woo-woo on everyone, but the more you give, the more you receive is a huge component of the work that I do. So a lot of people feel like they're never going to have enough money, so they cultivate it and they hoard it, and they don't give it away because they're like, oh no, I have to pay rent next month, which is important. I'm not saying don't pay rent, but I truly believe the more you circulate money in the world, the more you will receive. So those are just some tips.
Yeah, I love that, especially the aspect too about energy, because what you give, you really can get back in return. And I love the idea of not being afraid, maybe to give some of your money away to a charity or someone in need, or whatever feels good to you in that moment. I love the tips that you gave, because I was thinking about my own story as you were talking and answering those questions.
Yeah, I want to hear your story.
Oh gosh, well, my story is probably, I will just share, there are a lot of negatives around money and a lot of fear. And so I really resonate with your story. I love the work that you do and emphasizing on really shifting that. And then, allowing women and men to really step into that abundance to then give it back, which is another aspect of who you are and your work is that philanthropy. I read, I think either was in an Instagram post of yours or maybe it was on your website, and we've talked a little, it's somewhere in the ethers, I saw this, but you have done a lot of charity work, and I think you talked a lot about it on the podcast already. What was that? What have those experiences been like for you?
Oh my goodness. I think this is my true purpose in life. Like the first time I really saw true poverty, I have goosebumps even talking about it. I was with a group of children and they had nothing. They had no home. They were living in the dirt. They didn't have food to eat, but they were so happy. And I just think that it's so important that we need to realize that it's not the things in our life that bring us happiness. It's such a pure form. And I believe that each and every one of us are on this earth to be of service to others. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go, volunteer in Cambodia, but even just giving back your money, it doesn't have to be your time, but helping someone out on the street, giving $1 to a homeless man, I think that's truly what we're here for, to support and give back. And I think if we all give a little bit more of our time and our money, the world would be just such a better place at the end of the day.
Oh, I agree. So out of the service trips that you've done so far, is there one that really stands out to you the most as maybe having, I'm sure they've all had an impact, but maybe just one that really touched you?
Yeah. So I recently went in December, which is probably how I ended up in San Diego, with the Greatness Foundation. We traveled down to Mexico with a foundation called Baja Bound. And basically we built a home for a weekend. What was so impactful to me was that these families lived only 2 hours away from the United States. It was a 2-hour drive for us from San Diego. And the amount of poverty that we saw there, these kids, they needed clothes, they needed to be bathed, they had cavities in their teeth, there were dogs just animals all over the place that were, there was dogs eating other dogs. It was just, it pains me to talk about it, but that trip really changed my life. I was like, whatever I do for the rest of my life, if I can just, spend a little bit of my time to build a home for a family of children so they don't have to sleep in the dirt and, they don't eat dirt in their lungs and they can have a clean roof over their head. I'm trying not to cry.
No,
so I'm speaking
powerful.
So slowly, but it was so powerful. And I just want others to experience that as well. I think it's just part of this whole happiness and purpose journey.
Yeah.
If you can see that these people had nothing and they were so happy, we don't need everything in the world. We just need to make sure that we surround ourselves with people who love us and, you know, do things that make us feel happy and purposeful and give back. Well, I don't know if I just went on a tangent, but it was a really beautiful trip.
Yeah, it sounds like it
And I look
was.
forward to going back again.
It's amazing how when you sort of step outside of yourself and your daily routine and what you're used to and accustomed to, you can really gain this new perspective on life and who you are and what it is that you want to do. And I love your experience and what you've really gone through to sort of get to, I guess, this point, and just really being able to shift your perspective. And I want to go back a little bit to something that you touched on earlier, because I think it really ties back in to perspective and what you've been talking about. I've also been where you are, or where you've been in terms of dealing with depression or anxiety, or having a family history where, you know, that's very prevalent. And I just feel so inspired talking to you and hearing about how you know and you recognize, you know, the role depression has played in your own life or in your family's life. And then, you know, still being able to shift your own perspective and really step into who you are and what you're excited about and passionate about, and make sure, you know, that you take those chances and move across the country from New York, you know, to San Diego, and kind of reflecting maybe for a couple minutes, if you're willing, on just what that journey has been like, and even starting off as a kid. Because for me too, you know, I never felt like I fit in, always feel so different, always super mature for my age. But, you know, wanted to appear happy on the inside, but at home and on the inside, you know, just like a mess, like a total mess. Was there a moment for you where everything clicked and you realized, I don't want to be that way anymore? Was it really, but with your grandma, or was there a different moment for you where all of this kind of clicked and you decided kind of live life your way and on your own terms?
Yeah. So it was kind of a combination. It was the passing of my grandmother. She really sparked that fire within me to really sort of dig deeper into meditation. And I started practicing. I've always done yoga. Yoga was very something I started after college because I swam and realized that I had a lot of injuries. So I got in it really for the physical reason. But when I started diving deeper into meditation, I was practicing it daily. And I got into some groups in New York. And I really started expressing gratitude. And I think that was the biggest shift. So with depression, you tend to focus on all the bad things in your life. You know, maybe you're in a relationship that makes you unhappy, or I was like, I didn't feel like I was where I wanted to be in my life, in my job. I'm a very ambitious person. I think a lot of ambitious people struggle with this as well, that where I'm at was never good enough. So that shift in expressing daily gratitude was a huge eye opener. Even if it's really, at the beginning, it was so silly. So I would wake up in the morning and I would do a 10-minute meditation. And the first time I started meditating, I was like, this is stupid. I'm like, I have so many better things I can be doing right now. Like, I have an email to do, you know, I need to fix this on my website. I can write a blog post. Like, what am I doing? But just sitting and being with yourself really allowed me to sort of see what wasn't important in my life. And so after I would meditate, I learned to say 3 things that I'm grateful for, which again, I was like, okay, this is a waste of my time. But I forced myself to do it because some people out there, my meditation teacher was like, you're going to start to see shifts. So I woke up and I was like, well, I'm really grateful that my hair looks good this morning, like something really, really superficial. And I'm really grateful for the bed that I have a bed to sleep in, and I'm grateful for my family. I have such loving, supportive parents. And then over time, I started to see these shifts that the more I expressed gratitude, the more I was just grateful for everything. I was like, I might have not been happy in my job, but I was so grateful that I had a job. I had a steady stream of income, and I might not have been happy that I was living in New York because it was loud and dirty, and the people here, were sort of mean. But I was so grateful that I had this opportunity to have this experience to live here. And my whole mindset changed. It's miraculous. When you stop thinking about the negative, all these positive things just started flooding into your life. So that was one aspect. And then when I went on that trip in December, just to see that the impact that I could have on these other humans' lives was, that I can feel it in my gut right now. Like, that was my purpose. And I think those three things, you need to express gratitude. You need to have some sort of purpose and growth. And then at the end of the day, you need to give back. And that all three things sort of encompass was that big shift in my life.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love the evolution of your spiritual practice too, because I think so many of us start off as, oh my God, this is stupid. What am I doing?
Oh,
I'm sitting here in silence.
I don't think anyone starts off and they're like, I love this.
No, I think it's a real introduction. It takes time. And I love the evolution of gratitude and the role that it now plays in your life. And I think self-love really plays a role in this too, because it has a lot to do with the way in which we sort of speak to ourselves. And that negative self-talk can be so powerful and so strong. And it's, I think, a journey and a process in and of itself to kind of shift that and get to a space where you're more loving and kind and compassionate to yourself.
Yeah.
When you think of self-love, what comes to mind? And even what has your self-love journey been like?
Yeah. I was always the type of person that, I think it's very prevalent within females growing up that a lot of women struggle with body issues. And I trust it's a huge issue. And, I never wish that upon anyone, but it was something that I never really resonated with. I was like, I don't have any body issues. Like, I like the way I look, but I was super insecure when it came to my accomplishments. I guess because I'm just such an achiever, and I just want so much out of my life that's where my insecurity sort of sat. And the more I practiced meditation and the more I started to express gratitude, all these things of what I didn't have, maybe I didn't start a company at 21 like everyone else was in the millennial age. So that makes me less of a human. like ridiculous. Now that I hear it, I'm like, you sound ridiculous, Lauren. Like, just that sort of switching of the mindset really allowed me to love myself. I also sort of realized, and, this is just more of a personal thing, but I spoke about it in one of my Instagram posts. How cheesy. The other day. I always had a man in my life, which I thought was very interesting. And it's something that I'm still sort of working with today.
Yeah.
But I never really thought that I needed, a boyfriend or a man in my life, but they were always there. So, I had my first serious relationship at 16, and then I broke up with that boyfriend. And then at 19, I had another relationship. And then at 21, I had another relationship. And I was never, I thought unintentionally, like, looking for someone. And then when I got to, my age that I'm at today, I realized that I never really spent time with myself alone. And that's an uncomfortable space to be in. And I decided that I was going to take 6 months of no dating. Like, I was like, at all. If a guy comes up to you in a coffee shop and asks you for a date, you're going to say no. And it's been a real miraculous shift in my life when it comes to self-love. I've learned to really be comfortable with spending the time alone with myself. I don't, I'm not reaching for a Bumble to be like, oh my God, who can I talk to? Or like, who can I text right now? Or who can I call? Especially with this trip and, moving across country where you don't know anyone. And normally it would probably be my pattern to sort of go out and seek, someone of the opposite sex to talk to. And I am so comfortable with not having a man in my life. And this is the first time in my entire life that I've been able to say that, which I think answers your question of self-love.
Yeah, wow. So now, okay, so are you still in that space now where you're still
my 6 months?
You're still 6 months, or have you extended it, or where are you at with it?
No, I'm 4 months in. I wasn't really dating anyone before, but I was going on dates.
Yeah.
So my last serious relationship ended over a year ago, but I was still sort of dating guys. I meet someone here. Oh, sure, I'll go on a date. I'll meet you for a drink, yada, yada. And I feel like their time occupied my life. And removing that allowed me to really focus inward and see what I truly wanted in life. Like, not what me and my partner wanted, what me and myself and what I want and my purpose and what I'm here on this earth to do. So I've it's been almost 5 months. Oh, I was like looking at the date.
Time is flying.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And I think I'll probably extend it.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe I'll do it for a year. But you'd be shocked to hear, how much more time you have on your hands when you're not dating anyone.
Yeah. What do you think you've learned the most about yourself, kind of going through this, taking that time to look more inward and be with yourself, and I think probably get to know yourself a little bit better too?
Definitely. Yeah. I learned immediately that when things are bad, I don't want to deal with it. That was the first thing that I learned. If something happened, like whether it's like, I stubbed my toe and my toe hurts, or like on Monday, my dog got injured. I had to rush her to the ER. And if this was several months ago, I probably would have called someone like, how can you help me? This is bad. I can't deal with this. Let me share it with you so it can take some of the pain away. And I learned that I have the capabilities to sit with myself and deal with it. And that's part of self-growth as well. I learned that sitting with the negative is okay. And you need to do that to appreciate the joy in your life. And that I had the strength and the capability to do that. I didn't need anyone else. I'm going to get through this. It's going to be okay. And I'm going to live.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing that I learned, that I had the strength to deal with the hard times.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We kind of become codependent on the different people in our lives without even realizing it. And then when you're really forced to deal with something on your own, I think often we feel like, oh gosh, can I really do this? Can I really handle it? But you don't know unless you put yourself in that position. And it's amazing what you can prove to yourself along the way.
Yeah. It's been really great. It's still a process, trust me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, oh,
yeah,
it'd be nice to have someone else.
But I think it also goes to show, you've got this. Like, Lauren, you got this. I can handle it. And, at some point you may have a CoPilot, right? And somebody who can help you navigate it, but maybe it's more about learning to navigate it together as opposed to relying on the other person to sort of take charge and take the lead on it. Do you feel more empowered now since you've been doing this the last 5 months?
Definitely. Yeah. I definitely feel more empowered. I always felt like I was a strong person, but I feel great.
Yeah.
Not to toot my own horn, but I feel really great. And it's the first time I've been able to say to my mom when she goes, Lauren, when are you going to get a boyfriend? And I go, I don't know, when I feel like it.
Yeah. No pressure, right? I mean,
yeah, I think that's a lot of societal pressure.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah. No, there's
especially when you start to hit a certain age and people start to get married. Like, my friends are getting married now. And I always felt like, oh, okay, like, when am I going to meet someone and get married? And this is the first time that I can say, I'm okay with that not happening.
Yeah.
And I believe that it will happen one day, but I'm just not forcing it. That's another thing. It's like, I'm not forcing anything in my life, which is great.
Did you used to worry more about that? Like, when is it going to happen for me? Did you used to have like a timeline or a timetable for yourself?
Yeah. I never ever expressed this with anyone else, but internally I did. I thought, my parents got married very young. They're super cool. Like, they're just like the best parents. They love each other. They fight with each other. They bicker. They're great. They've been married for, 35 years. I might have just dated them. Shoot, they're going to yell at me. But they got married when they were 22, and they had me at 28, which is, quite young. And growing up, because that's what you're accustomed to, I thought maybe not get married at 22, but maybe, get married at 27. And then I hit that 27 mark, and you really, it gives you a point to reflect on your life. Like, I don't need someone in my life just to be there. I want to attract someone who's an equal to me. And yeah, I think I went on a tangent again.
No, there are no tangents. I promise. I agree, though.
Yeah.
I think the age that our parents got married or found each other, I think impacts our timeline we have in our own mind. And my
Yeah.
parents didn't get married until like 30 and 31.
Yeah.
And so for me, my whole life, I never felt that pressure of getting married in my 20s,
Yeah.
but I've always felt like there's this pressure to sort of be linked up or with somebody. And
Yeah.
I, for myself personally, I really believe that, you know, in order to bring in the right person who's right for you and is sort of your equal and parallels you, as opposed to being like, I don't ever want anybody in my life that I like need them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to
Yeah.
be like I'm relying on them for something. I want it to be like an equal foundation and an equal partnership. And I know for myself, in order to really call that into my life, I need to be whole as Sydney. Like Sydney needs to be
Yeah.
whole. Talking about myself in the third person, but you know what I mean.
No, you go, girl.
So whether that means loving myself unconditionally, being financially stable the way I would like to, you know, just being happy with where I am in my life and treating myself with that love, kindness, and compassion, you know, that I want and would expect, you know, from somebody else. I've got to do it for myself first. And
Agreed.
it's interesting to have that perspective. And then you sort of contrast it with people in your life. I'm sure you relate to this, who either are getting married and they're pretty young, or they feel this intense pressure to be linked up with someone, but they're not doing the work on themselves. Or then they start to kind of, I don't know, go out with or date or get into a serious relationship with somebody because they feel like they can't be alone. And so I've always felt kind of odd and unusual, but I think, you know, you really gotta get to a space within yourself first. And then, you know, the timeline and the timetable, I think, adjusts along the way. And I also really think we're going to live much longer than even our parents' generation. So there's no pressure, you know, when it'll happen, it'll happen. And in the meantime, you know, get to know yourself and who you are and what you love and what brings you joy. And the right person will kind of follow suit. That's just,
exactly,
you know, so I think you and I are pretty much on the same page.
That makes me so happy to hear. You are your most important relationship, you know?
Yeah. And it's about learning to cultivate that relationship with yourself.
The whole point of this podcast.
The whole point of this podcast. You nailed it. Are there things that you do to really cultivate that relationship with yourself now? I mean, do you journal, spend time with yourself? I mean, what does that look like for you?
Oh yeah, I do a lot of different things. I've been journaling my whole life, which is funny because it wasn't until I got into meditation they're like, you should really start journaling. I'm like, oh, I've been doing this since I'm like 10.
I got this covered.
Yeah, but I've always like been journaling, writing down my goals and like what I want, how I feel. So that's always been just a way for me to sort of connect with myself. I also do things that I actually want to do and say no to things that I don't want to do, which sounds ridiculous.
But so important because we do that too often.
So important. Yes. I always felt like I had to please people. Like if someone asked me, hey, Lauren, do you want to go out to the bar and grab a drink or beer after work? And I'm like, oh, well, you know, maybe I'll be missing out. The wheels would start to turn. I'm like, okay, well, you know, am I going to miss out on things? Like, what if they really want me to be there? You know, I guess I should go. I don't do the shoulds anymore. It's a yes or a no, and there's no in between, which
I love it.
So freeing. It's so freeing. If someone, you know, like, it's crazy. And I just wake up in the morning and go, what do I want to do today? Do I want to go to the farmer's market? Nope, I don't feel like that. Okay, I'm going to go ride my bike. Like, and that's just how I try to live my life. Of course, there are, you know, times that I have to go to the doctor and I don't really want to, but those are things that you just have to do. But for the most part, I really try to contrast those things. Yeah. And I just do things that really make me happy. Sit in the sun, put my feet on the grass, you know, move to California.
Where it's like perpetually sunny.
Yeah, that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to create that space in my life so I could do more things that bring me joy.
Yeah. Oh,
No,
I
no
love it.
plug intended.
Oh, but plug accepted.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that because you're right. I mean, if it's not a yes, it's what is that? I've been seeing on Instagram all the time. If it's not a yes, it's a hell
A
no.
hell yes.
Or if it's like a
Yeah. It's
hell
not a hell
yes,
yes, it's a
it's a
hell.
no. Yeah, you got it. I love
Yeah.
that because I think too often we do things because we have this FOMO, fear of missing out. And we feel like if we don't go, will we miss out on the experience? Will our friends or whoever not invite us again, if we keep saying no to things?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pressure there, and I just don't go. I'm with you.
That's good.
It's like if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to go. But my friends also
Yeah.
know, like, I don't go to clubs. I really don't like bars.
You don't go to clubs?
No, I'm like big on
I'm
like
shocked.
I'm big on like the blue plate special, like the 5:30 dinner.
Yes,
like
girl, yes.
going to bed early because I also just don't have the stamina for it. I'm not built that way. I'm 85 on the inside. So, it's about knowing your limits, right? And accepting
We are
yourself.
kindred spirits.
I got that memo like the beginning of this conversation. You and I are going to be lifelong friends. I already decided. But, it's like knowing your limits and accepting yourself for who you are. And then, you say yes to the things that align with that. And then if it doesn't feel good, you say, thanks for the invite, but let me know how it was, but I'm not going. I'm going to stay in my PJs, and just being okay with that and not feeling bad or making yourself feel bad because you didn't go.
That's all part of the self-love journey too. I mean, you have to be comfortable with yourself and really know what your values are. You sit down and like at one point, like I like to just write down my values. I did that in my whole personal development journey. Like, do I value partying? No. And that's not how I'm going to spend my money or my time. And I think that's how everyone should just live their lives. Because then there's no shoulds or feeling uncomfortable or unhappiness, and everyone will just be better people and who they're meant to be.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. It all goes back to that self-love and that whole journey, just to get to a space where you're treating yourself with that love and kindness and that compassion. And I think it goes back to what you're really all about, which is if you treat yourself with that compassion and that kindness and you give all of that to yourself, then you can give to the world, right? And you can give to others and you really can, be of service that way. And
yes, exactly.
It all ties in.
I'm raising my hands up like, woo, yes.
I agree. I wish I could see you right now, but I can feel your arms like in the air, all the way down in San Diego, but we're not too far away from each other. So
yeah, I know you have to make a trip down here.
Yeah, you've got to come up here. You got to see LA.
Definitely.
So I guess with everything that you've done and this business that you're building and the people that you're inspiring and empowering, along the way, do you feel like you really found your voice in doing all of this?
Yeah, I really, really do. Something in my gut just tells me like, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And I think it's going to change over time. I mean, we're human, we evolve, and that's all the purpose of us being here on this earth. But for right now, this is my calling, like to make sure that people really realize that they have a purpose in this world and there's a bigger purpose than them being unhappy. Like no one should live that way. And I'm excited for this year and the future and all the other exciting things like this podcast and everything. Yeah,
I love that. I love that you keep going back to purpose, and your purpose is much more than those emotions you're feeling, in that moment. Because whether or not, you realize it, you have something to offer the world, and it's unique. And, there are tons of people, right, within different spaces, lawyers, doctors, life coaches, people who, are within spiritual or personal development, but everybody has a unique message and something different to share. But it's about being confident with what you're doing and just knowing that you've got something to contribute and not letting it sort of derail you. And so I love that emphasis that you really put on purpose and kind of owning and stepping into that within your work. And you've totally done it within your life too.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say one thing, that people don't start things because they're like, oh, someone else is doing it. And like you touched on that with the podcast. Like, yes, there are other podcasts that talk about, personal development and finding joy in life, but no one does it quite like you. I mean, as humans, I think I read this somewhere that even Shakespeare's work that has been so impactful on who we are as a society he copied that from someone else. Like, they weren't original ideas. And I like to tell that to people that, there really aren't any new original ideas, but there's no you, and no one's going to tell it or share it or blast it out to the world quite like you are going to. And I think that's all that I want people to hear.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
No one else is going to do it just like you. And I love that piece of advice you gave. And you just moved here from New York to San Diego. I know you haven't been down here that long, but kind of within the move and all the work that you're doing, how do you help yourself stay balanced?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it goes back to kind of doing what feels right in my gut. I don't like to question things. I like to be very decisive. I think, some days I want to sit at the computer and I'll do like 10 sessions and I'll write like 10 blog posts and do like 2 videos. Like, that's the day that I'm going to like blast it all out. And then maybe I'd wake up the next day and be like, you know what? I don't want to take this call. And so I go for a walk instead. I also like to make sure that I'm like really connected in nature, because that's where I thrive. But I really came out here to sort of create more space in my life for what I really want to come in. That was a big part in finding that balance in my life. I didn't feel like I had the balance in New York, and being out in California has been a part of finding that. Yeah.
What are some things that you want to create space for?
Yeah, I wanted to create more space for happiness to come into my life. Was a big thing, more joy in my life. I know, again, sounds cliche, but it was really true. I felt, being in New York, I was too accustomed to how life was growing up, and this go attitude and this negative mindset that is just, it's so eminent in the streets of New York City.
Yeah.
I wanted to create space for my business to thrive out here. I needed to take that step in making myself happy to then grow my business. Because if I didn't take the time to do what brings me joy in life, I can't give back to the world in a big way. So what brings me joy is being outside in the sun, like, so simple, but just getting a little bit of that vitamin D and putting my feet in the grass. And I just, eventually I'd like a partner in life. Not right now. I think my biggest thing is finding that happiness and just cultivating more and more happiness in my life and growing my business.
I just think it's so cool that you got to a place within yourself where you knew that you wanted to make that space and that you needed to take certain steps to do that. I think so many of us kind of run around like with a chicken with their head cut off and not knowing that we need to make that kind of space. And so,
trust me, I was there.
Yeah, I believe it.
I did that in my life. Yes.
And now you're on the other side of it and you're really making that space.
I think it comes from also like conquering fears is a big thing. I don't think people want to conquer things that scare them. And that is a part of growth that is so important. Like, taking risks and tackling fear is what makes you grow as a human. And that's how you sort of figure out like what you do want in life.
Yeah.
Like, maybe this move is a terrible idea, but I did it. And then I'll realize, maybe this isn't where I'm meant to be. Maybe I should move to Alaska. It's not going to happen, but.
But I agree. It's about that willingness to take those risks and to conquer those fears. And do you feel like you really conquered a huge fear by coming out to San Diego?
It's funny. This actually, it wasn't that hard. I know that sounds really, really cheesy, but what was hard for me, so I did something this past year. I did 30 days of conquering fear. And I might actually do this within as like a Facebook challenge, because it was so important to me in my journey. But for 30 days, I did something that scared me. Now, I can tell you that growing up, like, I was the kid that my mother had to force me. I was so quiet that she had to like force me to talk to people. She would we'd stop at like the gas station. She'd be like, here's $5. You're going to go inside and like buy a Diet Coke. And I would have like a panic attack. Like, I can't talk to a stranger.
I get
like,
it.
I'm 10.
I get it.
I'm 10 years old. And she's like, go inside. And she would try to force me to do those things. And that's what I had to do for myself. I mean, it was so silly, but like, it'd be a Tuesday and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Something that scares me. It's like, oh, a phone call from an unknown number is coming through. I'm going to answer that phone. Like, even something as small and minute as that
Yeah.
really made a huge impact on my life, because then things started to get easier. And then at the end of it, I went skydiving by myself without telling anyone else, because it
Oh
was
my
always something
God.
on my
Oh
list.
my God.
And by the end of the month, I was like, this is super easy. And I just went. So making this big trip actually wasn't that hard, because I tackled all these other little things that used to scare me. And that's just sort of like stretching my boundaries and like what else I can accomplish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. That is you. So
Oh
you
my
jumped
gosh.
out of a plane.
I jumped out of a plane. So I kid you not, I didn't tell anyone. And I went, because here's the thing, like, this is when I came out to San Diego in December, and I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone. But what I did was, after I landed, I announced it on social media. Like, I put it on my Instagram story, like, hey mom, I just jumped out of a plane. And like waited for her to
Oh
waited for her to
my
like
God.
find it. And about an hour later she called me and she goes, you did what? I'm like, yeah, I went skydiving. It was something I really wanted to do, and I just, I did it. And she's like, thank God you didn't tell me, I would have had a heart attack.
No, you were right.
Yeah.
Don't tell her. I'm sure she would have
Yeah.
flipped out. Oh, but how
Yeah.
cool. Oh my God, I'm just blown away that you did that. And I totally relate to you not wanting to go in as a kid and buy a Diet Coke from somebody, because I shared this on this podcast, but like growing up, I wouldn't answer the phone. I wouldn't make phone calls. I'd make my younger sister, who's like about 4 years younger than me, like make the phone call to order the pizza, because I was terrified to talk to people, to put myself out there. I, in like first grade, would run out of the class after my mom dropped me off, because like I was afraid to, like I had separation anxiety. So like totally understand what you're talking about. And it's been like a lifetime of putting yourself out there and pushing yourself and proving to yourself that it's okay and you'll be okay and you can handle it.
We are some kindred spirits.
Yeah, seriously, like the world is not going to come crumbling down around you because like you went up to somebody and was like giving them money to pay for the Diet Coke. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's about that perspective and building up that muscle. And oh, how cool though that you jumped out of a plane. I can't get over it. I can't get over it. So with everything that we've been talking about and everything that you have going on, what are you most excited for this year?
Yeah, I'm excited for all of these opportunities that I wouldn't have had if I didn't take this big risk to come into my life. Like, I wouldn't be on this podcast with you, which I love. Loving this.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We wouldn't be having this conversation.
I'm just excited to see where my life goes. Just, it's such a big question. I know it sounds really cheesy, but like, I'm excited to grow my business. I'm excited to get more clients. I'm excited to start putting courses out there. I'm excited to put more content on YouTube, like little things like that. So I have, if you know anyone, so we'll put it out there in the universe. I want to travel to Africa this year. It's always been something on my bucket list. And I'm trying to find a foundation that I can go and volunteer that doesn't require me to go for more than 2 weeks. So I'm putting it out in the universe and in podcast land. If anyone knows of a foundation I can volunteer in Africa, I'd really love to do that in 2018. Hit me up. Send me a DM.
Okay. So you heard it. If you know of somewhere, let Lauren know. Oh my gosh, Lauren, you have so much good stuff coming up. So I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everybody who comes on Seek the Joy podcast. What is your biggest dream?
My biggest dream is that everyone finds joy in their life. Oh, that's so cheesy. I can't answer that, but it's true. Yeah. I want everyone to find their purpose, because that's what we're here for, and to ultimately just serve others and give back in a really big way. I just want to make massive impact on the world so that they know that they're here for a reason. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Oh, you are definitely my kindred spirit. I loved having this conversation with you and learning more about you and the journey that you've been on. And for everyone that's listening, where can they find you and learn more and get more involved?
Yeah, so you can visit my website. It's laurenapeterson.com, or follow me on Instagram, which is Lauren A. Peterson with a little underscore, and that's Peterson. But or friend me on Facebook. All those social media nuggets. But my website is where you can find all the goodies.
Okay, perfect. And I'll include everything in the show notes so everyone can find you. And thank you for coming on Seek the Joy podcast. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. We could probably chat for another 3 hours.
We probably could, which just means we'll have to have you back on.
Oh, that was so much fun. I had so much fun.